Hello, and welcome to Transformation by Truth podcast, where the called become the chosen, and those who have been dedicated to serve the Most High receive the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, as we progress our quest for holiness, perfection, and everlasting life. My name is D.L. Anderson. I'll be your tour guide. Let's get started with today's lesson. Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to our Transformation by Truth podcast and day 3 of the Quest for Holiness, Perfection, and Everlasting Life 2022, week 1. Now, we've reached the midpoint of this inaugural week, and I'm happy to let everyone know that we have a good word prepared for you today and more good word to finish out this series. And so I'm not going to belabor. I'm going to get right to this power-packed lesson. Let's get started. Now, today's podcast is day 3 of our Blueprint of the Quest series, a series dedicated to ensuring you understand the most important facets of this journey and what you should expect over the next 52 weeks as we carry on our quest. You should consider this week as 1 week dedicated to preparing you for the quest of a lifetime. Therefore, I admonish everyone to pay close attention to those things we are sharing with you this week, because this week represents the foundation of your journey. And the strength of your foundation will determine the success you will have. Now, here are the series objectives. Day 3, we are going to analyze this quest by its 3 primary phases and 2 key roles of the Spirit. Now, without further ado, I will present today's feature lesson, introducing the Quest for Holiness, Perfection, and Everlasting Life 2022, Day 3. Now, the title of today's podcast is To Be Victorious and Overcome All Things. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. Isaiah 54:17. Now, the objectives of today's lesson are: 1, define the 3 primary phases of the quest for holiness. 2, relate these 3 phases to the 3 phases of transformation. 3, examine 2 of the primary roles of the Spirit in our lives. And 4, discuss the 7 primary enemies you will face on this quest. Let's start with the 3 phases of the quest for holiness. Now, there are 3 primary phases associated with the quest for holiness. Naturally, these 3 phases correspond to the 3 primary objectives of this quest. Here's a question. Considering yesterday's podcast on transformation, what do you suppose these 3 primary phases are? The answer: these 3 phases are power, balance, and perfection. In essence, the same 3 phases of the transformation process, strengthening the parallel between the models of transformation and holiness. Let's begin with the topic of power. Now, the goal of the first phase of our quest is to unlock all the powers of the set-apart spirit of Elohim. Now, this is crucial because, as I said before, the powers of the set-apart spirit are not activated upon reception, they are activated upon implementation. That is to say, we cannot access or utilize the powers of the Spirit if we're not doing the Father's will and following the way of holiness. The alternative would suggest we could use the power of Elohim without his license or approval. And this is madness. Now, many will receive the Spirit, but very few will ever tap into its powers because very few are willing to put in the spiritual work required to unlock these powers. And since the Spirit will not strive with man, it will eventually leave these slothful servants, and many times they will not even know it. Now, fortunately, this model of the slothful servant does not depict anyone who has joined us on this quest. I know because I, by the Spirit, have vetted all of you, and I've made it very clear. The quest for holiness is life's most challenging endeavor. Yet it offers life's greatest reward, that is everlasting life. And seeing as the only other final destination of the soul is endless death, we are more than willing to dedicate ourselves to this quest and do whatever it takes to succeed. And to succeed, we're going to need a lot of power. Yet have no fear, for the power you need to succeed every obstacle on your quest is within you. My dear friends, you have the power. And one of the first things I'm going to teach you is how to unlock it. So get ready, because we're going to have a smashing good time defeating every foe who stands in our way. Now let's discuss balance and perfection. Now, the second phase of this quest is balance. The objective of balance is simply to achieve a healthy balance between your spiritual and physical man or woman, in which the spirit is preeminent and can solidify your mastery of the Father's will. Now, this phase is very important because achieving balance allows us to begin using the powers we unlocked in phase one. Now, without balance, it's impossible to consistently use the powers of the Spirit. For an unsteady man or woman, attempting to use these powers would do much more harm than good. And the Father will not license their work or their usage of his power. Now, this matter lends itself to perfection, the third and final phase of this quest. As we stated before, perfection is a spiritual model illustrated by men and women executing the Father's will without fail. Now, along these lines, it's impossible to constantly execute the Father's will without power and balance. For power is needed to defeat every foe, and balance is required to use this power. The next step, then, is to gain the proficiency to use your powers and balance to be victorious in every spiritual conflict and overcome all things. This, my friends, is the goal of perfection and why it is the conclusion of the way of holiness. Moving on, let's discuss two of the primary roles of the Spirit. Now, the sum of these matters prove it is the Father's will for us to be victorious in every area of our lives. Therefore, the quest for holiness can be looked at as a series of spiritual courses that transforms us into a man or woman who is victorious in all things. Now, as I've said before, our ability to be victorious and overcome all things is evidence we are children of Elohim and true disciples of Yahushua Messiah. We know this because it's impossible to be born of Elohim and fail to overcome this world. 1 John 5:3-4 reads, "For this is the love for Elohim, that we guard his commands, and his commands are not heavy, because everyone having been born of Elohim overcomes the world. And this is the overcoming that has overcome the world, our belief." Who is the one who overcomes the world but he who believes that Yahushua is the Son of Elohim? This is the one that came by water and blood, Yahushua Messiah, not only by water, but by water and blood. And it is the Spirit who bears witness, because the Spirit is the truth. Now, as the Spirit is the truth, and the truth is a source of our transformation into men and women who have full dominion, authority, and power, we cannot overcome any foe if we are not being led by the Spirit. And in being led by the Spirit, we progressively become one. Now, this should not come as a surprise to anyone, for it's impossible to be born of Elohim if you're not being led by the Spirit. We know this because everyone who is not being led by the Spirit is on a path that leads to endless death. Romans 8:13-14 reads, "For if you live according to the flesh, you are going to die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you shall live. For as many as are led by the Spirit of Elohim, these are sons of Elohim." Now, being led by the Spirit, we should understand how the Father desires for us to use the powers of His Spirit in two primary ways: to insulate ourselves and our families against the powers of darkness, and to tear down the works of darkness in the lives of those He has called. Luke 11:14-15 reads, "And he was casting out a demon, and it was dumb. And it came to be, when the demon had gone out, that the dumb spoke. And the crowds marveled. But some of them said, He casts out demons by Beelzebul, the ruler of the demons. And others, trying him, were seeking from him a sign from heaven. And he, knowing their thoughts, said to them, Every reign divided against itself is laid waste, and a house divided against a house falls. So if Satan also is divided against himself, how shall his reign stand? Because you say, I cast out demons by Beelzebul. Now, if I cast out demons by Beelzebul, by whom do your sons cast them out? Because of this, they shall be your judges. But if I cast out demons by the finger of Elohim, then the kingdom of Elohim has come upon you. When a strong man, having been well armed, watches over his own court, his possessions are in peace. But when a stronger than he comes upon him and overcomes him, he takes from him all his armor in which he trusted and divides his spoils. Now, presently, many of you on this quest are not stronger than the enemies situated to war with you at some point on your path. Do not be discouraged by this, because the Father will not allow them to war with you until you are ready. For every test and trial you experience on this quest is synchronized with your progress. And so you will be able to handle them when the time comes. 1 Corinthians 10:13 reads, No trial has overtaken you except such as is common to man. And Elohim is trustworthy, who shall not allow you to be tried beyond what you are able, but with the trial shall also make the way of escape, enabling you to bear it. Nevertheless, the reality is you have many enemies who war against your soul. And at some point on this quest, you must defeat them all. That's why I continue to say you've come to the right place at the right time. See, the church is not equipped to bring you to a place of dominion to succeed in spiritual warfare. On the other hand, our ministry was specifically called to address this glaring gap, the power gap in the church circuit, and to go forth and to conquer. Now, Pinnacle of Holiness Ministries was founded upon dominion, authority, and power. And we are freely sharing our knowledge of the path that led us to this establishment with everyone who has joined us on this quest. Moving on, let's now discuss your 7 greatest enemies. Now, there are 7 primary enemies you must overcome as you travel the way of holiness. These are 7 of your greatest threats, having destroyed the spiritual careers of hundreds of thousands who have come before you. Now, we'll analyze these 7 at some point in this quest in greater detail. For the best way to defeat your enemy is to know him. Now, this knowledge will provide you the key to defeating him, and you will, because by the time you encounter him on your quest, you will be stronger than he is. And here are your 7 greatest enemies: your sinful nature, yourself, your flesh, the kingdom of darkness, the eternal force of evil, your ego, and death. Now, as you can see, some of these enemies are internal to you, and some are external to you. Ergo, your strategy for defeating each will be unique. And we're going to provide you with the tools, the teaching, and the training you need to develop and employ it. In the end, you will have overcome every weapon formed against you, just like our loving master. Now, here's the final word. It's all about holiness. It's very true that a critical part of holiness is about achieving compatibility with our Creator. Yet, as holiness is parallel to transformation, we must never forget how the fundamental goal of these parallel models is to provide us access to unlimited measures of powers so we can defeat every foe and do all things in accordance with the Father's will. So now let's discuss what's next. So we completed today's podcast to be victorious and overcome all things. And tomorrow is day 4 of this Blueprint of the Quest series, the role of Yahushua Messiah in our quest. Now, if you're a member and have questions, please click the Q&A box underneath the video player. Likewise, if you have comments you want to share with the group, please share those in the comment box located underneath the QA box. Now, if you're not a member and you have questions about today's podcast, feel free to contact us via our website at www.pinnacleofholiness.com using the form on our contact page, and we'll respond to you as soon as we can. And thank you for being with us today. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Remember to tune in with us every Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And if you haven't already, visit us at www.pinnacleofholiness.com and make sure you sign up to join the quest for holiness, perfection, and everlasting life 2022.